and rip off the knob!
That's me pretending to air guitar. It was not convincing. I didn't rehearse. I just thought, hey, I should do something like musical when the camera turns on, and it was a mistake. Live and learn. I'm Brian from Shy. Welcome to Rent a Friend Radio. We are here. Well, we're going to have some fun today. Today, I'm going to introduce you to some friends of mine to help you learn some stuff. And we're going to get into the Socratic Ducky. We are at the end of this book, and it's all about logical fallacies at the end here, where I'm going to teach you what logical fallacies are. I'm going to give you some categories of what to look for. So hopefully you can hear them coming and you can not fall prey to bad logic. Illogic. That's what logical fallacies are. It's all like, oh, that doesn't make sense. But in the meantime, oh man. Okay, so I have in the past, I'm just going to stop the background music because I'm about to go straight to video. In the past, I have mentioned my good friend Vocab Malone, now Cab Malone, over at God City. Make a city, God City. Formerly Vocab Malone, now Cab Malone at God City. Formerly Street Apologist, which I got a song coming out, not this week, but soon, from Schwan the Rhyme Scientist, about him, called Street Apologist. Like, that was his thing. And now he's rebranded just in time for that song to come out. It is what it is. Anyway, he was part of a series of videos. Essentially, we find that the best way to learn stuff is through humor, which is why I try to be funny in the books I write. I don't know if it works, but, you know, eye of the beholder. So, Vocab is teamed up with David Wood and John McCrae and a guy called the Apostate Prophet and a variety of other friends. And they have created a series of videos meant to teach you what Islam is. And it's called Muhammad's Boom Boom Room. So let me see if I can't there we go. Can you still hear me? You can. Muhammad's Boom Boom Room. The principle behind this idea is that Muhammad has a talk show. And Muhammad has different guests on. And as they talk about whatever the guest is into, whether they have things in common or they don't, you learn about Muhammad and Islam from the Islamic sources. So let me explain the Islamic sources. First, there's the Quran, before I got into it. So the Quran is their holy book. It's a mess. First of all, the thing is not organized chronologically. This drives me insane. All right, I have the same problem with the Old Testament. I'm like, you should just put it in the order it was written, but instead it's kind of shuffled, and you have to be like, well, hold on, did this happen before that? And it's like, just put it in order. So the Quran is worse, because it's not only not in chronological order, in the order that the chapters were revealed, or the surah were revealed, they're in order from, I think, like shortest to longest. Like, they're arranged by the length of the chapter, essentially. Which you probably won't notice if you read it because it's just convoluted nonsense that doesn't say much. But there's a couple of good nuggets in there. Like, I think it's Surah 3, where you're told not only that you can beat your wife into submission, but you're taught how to. How useful is that, right? But you can't you got to do it right. First, you warn her, then you banish her from your bed, then you beat her. You give her 2 strikes, then she's out. Anyway, so that's the Quran. The Quran is supposedly given to Muhammad from the angel Gabriel, who I guess inspired an illiterate caravan robber by throttling him by the neck and screaming, because that's what angels do. I mean, just look at the Old Testament. Anytime an angel showed up, he would grab the guy by the throat and go, command, right? Isn't that what they always did? No? Is that not? Maybe that wasn't really the angel Gabriel. Anyway, so the Quran is that supposed revelation to Muhammad. But then there's this whole other collection of books written about Muhammad. And this is called the Hadith. There's just thousands of pages of this stuff. And there's a whole backstory, but basically, if you just take what we know from the Quran, I don't even know that you could prove Muhammad existed. There's like the word Muhammad is used like twice, maybe 3 times, something like that. You're not given any good, strong backstory as to who this prophet is, or even that that's his name, because Muhammad can just mean like, I think it just means servant of God, something like that. It can be a title. The word Muhammad can just be used as a title without being a name. So we have to assume that it makes reference. Anyway, it's a whole thing. Don't want to get into that. But the point is, aside from the Quran, in order to learn about Muhammad and his backstory and all of that jazz, you got to go to this other collection of teaching, the Hadith, because this is where you go, oh, well, Muhammad said this about this verse. So, for instance, the Quran tells you that the sun sets in a muddy pool of water somewhere to the west, right? It doesn't just disappear over the horizon to the west. If you go far enough west, you can find that pool of water where it sinks into, and then it travels under the earth, because the earth is flat, obviously, and it travels under the earth until it gets to another spring on the east side where it pops out and goes, hey, it has to wait for Allah to go, yeah, you can rise. And then it does. And thankfully, Allah doesn't forget. And then it goes up, and at the top of the dome over the flat earth, that's where the throne of Allah is. And it has to stop there until Allah goes, oh yeah, you can keep going. And then it goes to the next muddy pool. And now you're thinking, okay, well, maybe when the Quran says this, it's just a metaphor. Like, it doesn't really mean, it's like you see the reflection of the sun as it sets over this muddy pool. You might think so, but what did the Prophet himself say? Well, that's what the Hadith is for. The Hadith tells us that Muhammad said, oh no, like a dude actually went there and saw it, and it sinks into this pool of muddy water. So thankfully, Muhammad cleared that up for people, because otherwise they might just think, the sun doesn't sink into a pool at the end of the day. Anyway, so instead of, reading thousands of pages of Hadith and Quran, if you just want to learn some snippets here and there about the personality of Muhammad and the things that he did and the things that he taught, that's why there's the Boom Boom Room. It is a fun way for Muhammad, in character, to interact with other people and for you to learn a bit about him. So let's look at a little bit of that now that I've introduced it with way too much. Here it is with its catchy theme song.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Muhammad's Boom Boom Room, where all of my guests either agree with me completely or they go boom. I am your host, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon me. And with me now is a man who has been called history's greatest questioner, which is perfect because I've been called history's greatest womanizer. Prophet Socrates, thank you for joining me.
Oh, I'm not a prophet.
Well, you are now, because whenever I talk about any important person from history, I say that he's a prophet of Islam. It's an easy way to convince that person's followers to believe in me.
It might be better to speak the truth and not make stupid claims.
All right, so this, my friends, this is David Wood. David Wood, he's a psychopath. And you might think I'm being facetious there. No, he's literally a psychopath. So his story, you got to go find his testimony. He does a one take where a dude with a camera follows him as he walks to the subway, down into the train, gets on the train, gets off the train, and then meets somebody because he's on his way to have a conversation with somebody. That whole time, in one take, he gives his whole testimony. Like, he's been insane his entire life. He's like, when I was a kid, I believed evolution. I'm like, I am the most evolved. He's like, I was very arrogant. He was an atheist, hated God, hated religion, hated Christians, tried to kill his own father with a hammer, failed, but got arrested, went to jail. In jail, met some Christians, and essentially it's because of his arrogant attitude where he's like, well, I could be better than them at whatever. He learned they were fasting. He's like, I can fast longer than you. I'll stop eating for the next month, and nearly killed himself. Like, he was just out of his mind. And he got thrown into solitary a couple of times. He's like, when I was in there, like, I had nothing to do but read. And I don't know if he got a Bible because he wanted it to learn about what the Christians were up to, or if it was just given to him. But that's when he started reading, and then he started having conversations with these people. And at some point, David Wood became a Christian. And so now he's no longer a danger to himself and others, but he's still incapable of having normal human emotions, which makes him the perfect guy to make fun of Islam. Because when Muslims are like, I'm going to murder you and your wife and your children and your mother, he's all like, all right, do it. Come get some. Like one dude left him a comment and was like, I'm going to cut your head off. And he was like, all right, look, Thursday, I'm going to be taking this train. I'm going to get off here. I will wait for you. I'll be there at noon. I will wait for you there, but I got to go teach a class, so I can't wait forever. I'll be there for maybe half an hour. So if you're going to come cut my head off, that's where you can find me. He's got a video of him standing at that train station waiting for the guy to come cut his head off. Like, this is the guy. That's David Wood. So that's who's playing Socrates here is David Wood. He's brilliant. And you wouldn't know by watching him talk that he's a psycho. He has to tell you about that. He's got a weird sort of 80s kid sense of humor. You know, he was into the rap of the 80s, because who wouldn't be? But he's a doctor now, a doctor of something, Dr. Wood. So Dr. David Wood, he's Nabil Qureshi. There's a guy you need to find. He wrote a book called Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus. So Nabil was one of David's friends from, I want to say college, maybe high school. I forget the timeline. I'm not real good at the timeline. But at the time, he was a Muslim, raised Muslim, and he became friends with David. David became a Christian, so the two of them would debate. But they were friends, so they would have friendly debates, you know, as much as they can. And eventually, Nabil, like so many other Muslims, had a dream where Jesus reveals himself to him. Like, the last stat I heard was something like 70%. 7 out of 10 Muslims anywhere in the world, but especially in the Middle East where it's majority Muslim, those that become Christians say that they saw Jesus somehow, whether it was in a dream or a vision, or he just shows up in their living room and says, you asked to see God, here I am. It's wild. So that happened to Nabil, and he ultimately became a Christian and started, you know, with David teaching about Islam and Christianity and how they differ. Because I got to tell you, like, as somebody who was growing up in the Midwest here, I always thought Islam, it's an Abrahamic religion. It's monotheistic. They respect the Bible. It's basically like being Catholic, but from the Middle East, right? Apparently not. It's just, I was just hideously ignorant because I went to a public school. So David Wood, friends with Nabil Qureshi. Nabil sadly has passed away at this point, died of cancer, but he's left a couple of books behind, and he's left behind David Wood here. So let's watch a little bit more of this so you can get the gist of how this show works. It's funny, it's entertaining, but it's meant to teach you about Muhammad and the teachings of Islam. So let's watch a little bit more of this here.
The Prophet of Islam says what?
What?
The Prophet of Islam says what?
What?
Alhamdulillah. Now we have even more proof that I am a prophet of the great God Allah. Even the prophet Socrates spoke about me.
So, you can write now?
No, I just draw pictures.
I thought pictures were forbidden.
Stupid book!
So, you claim to be an expert in religious matters.
Peace be upon me. You can ask me any question, and I shall answer it.
Well, I've been reading your book, and I'm a little confused as to your view of creation.
Peace be upon me. You've come to the answer, man.
You say in chapter 30, verse 20 of the Quran, that Allah created human beings from dust.
Peace be upon me. Allah indeed created us from dust.
And dust is dry, is it not?
Dry. Peace be upon me.
Yet in chapter 24, verse 45, the Quran declares that Allah creates every living creature from water.
Yes. Water is the substance from which Allah has created all living things.
And human beings are living creatures, are they not?
Peace be upon me.
So human beings are created from water.
Peace be upon me.
Isn't water wet?
Peace be upon me.
And wet is the opposite of dry?
Peace be upon me.
Socrates, he makes a point.
According to the
So the way that this goes is in the banter, you'll see that they're constantly quoting the Quran and the Hadith, and they bring the receipts, like unlike what I just did in this introduction here. Like I think in Surah 3, I don't have any of the Quran memorized, but I'm pretty sure it's Surah 317. But don't quote me on that. They will quote, and they will give you the receipt so you can go and look it up yourself. And I've done that a bunch. I've like looked at the thing they've said, and I've gone to, there's various like Hadith online, and you can look it up. So you can do your own homework and research. But let me show you what else they got here. So this is just Socrates. Socrates shows up a couple of times, but the list that is available in this playlist, at least, there's multiple places on YouTube where this is found. But Muhammad meets Paul, Muhammad meets Satan, Muhammad meets Donald Trump, Muhammad meets Socrates again, Black Hebrew Israelites, Media Muhammad, Nation of Islam, Socrates again, Stephen Hawking, the Joker, Apostate Prophet, a Klansman, YouTube's Trust and Safety Team, Moses, Darth Vader, Santa Claus, the Angel Gabriel's in here. Hold on, let me show you the Joker, because David Wood's Joker is pretty good. It's legit. And David did his homework. He's a comic book nerd. You can tell by some of the stuff that he wrote in here.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Muhammad's Boom Boom Room, where all of my guests either agree with me completely or they go boom. I am your host, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon me. And with me now is the greatest supervillain of all time, the Clown Prince of Crime,
The jester of genocide, the ace of knaves, the caliph of clowns, live and in person, it's the one and only Joker! Pre-recorded for this time zone.
Don't interrupt me!
But I'm an agent of chaos, Puddin'.
The only agent of chaos here is my detonator. But if you interrupt me again, I'm going to be an agent of pain.
Oh, I love pain. I love suffering. I love dead.
The two of them get along
severed heads and
splendidly. But let me show you how every video ends.
Explosions.
Then you must love Al-Islam. Sometimes all it takes is a little push of a button.
Well, what are we waiting for? Let's blow ourselves up and get our standing ovation.
So at the end of every video, Muhammad blows them up. And then they come back again, because apparently this is his paradise.
Blow up by telling me who the next guest should be. Of course.
Silence, fool! I am doing a show here. So that's Cat Malone and David Wood and a host of others. And so all of this to say, if you want to learn about Islam, who was Muhammad, what did he do, what did he teach, what did he actually say, from people who bring the receipts and show you, here's where it is in the Quran, here's where it is in the Hadith. This is a great way to start because it's funny and entertaining, it's pop culture savvy, and they bring the receipts. You're going to learn about it, and you're going to go, oh no, this is not Catholic. This is so much worse. All right. So today, I'm going to get into logical fallacies in a bit here. But in the meantime, my friends, we are going to start off with a little bit of popularity context. You ever see a mustache that is just out of control? Well, here's a song about it. Mustache Out of Control by Popularity Context here on Rent a Friend Radio.
He walked in the room like a disco typhoon. Velvet pants, gold boots, and a cosmic perfume. But what stole the show and made me lose my soul was the twist, curl, flare, that mustache out of control. Mustache out of control. Mustache too bold to be home. Mustache, it's got a mind of its own. I try to look away, but it hypnotized my bones. It had beads, it had bells, it had a tiny umbrella. It waved at me like a flirty caterpillar. I said, It's not just hair, it's a lifestyle in motion. Mustache out of control. Too bold to be whole. It's got a mind of its own. I try to look away, but it hypnotized my bones. It does a cha-cha on his upper lip. It sip mojitos with a velvet grip. It played the kazoo at a Mardi Gras ball. That mustache had no chill at all. Twist it, comb it, march it, can't relax it. Oh no. Mustache out of control. Too bold to be whole. It's got a mind of its own. I try to look away, but it hypnotized my bones. It hypnotized my bones. It hypnotized my bones.
You know, you're in trouble when that mustache gets to hypnotizing your bones. When your skeletal system is implied, oh, it has gone too far. Mustache out of control from our good friends Popularity Context here on Rent a Friend Radio. I am Bri from Shy. The show I was talking about before again is called Mohammed's Boom Boom Room. David Wood is kind of like the writing force behind that. He was the one who's playing the Joker. He was the one playing Socrates. And it's hosted in a variety of different places on YouTube because, you know, they put it up and other people borrowed it and put it up. And YouTube is like, you cannot do that to Al-Islam, alhamdulillah. And they were like, how about over here? And then the other dude is Vocab Malone, now known as Cab Malone, over at Make Your City God City. So if you look for God City, Cab Malone, that's the guy who was playing Muhammad. He's brave. And he does the character so well, it's fun. Like, I never met the real Muhammad, but that's how I picture him now. All right. What are we doing today? We're getting to the end of the Socratic Ducky. Are you excited? I'm excited. This is going to be great. We're getting to the end. And at the end of the story, so here's what we've done with this book. This book, by the way, where's my reading page? Book reading, is that one? There it is. Socratic Ducky, along with most of my books, are available as a free digital download over at abitoforange.com. Whew, we have gone all the way down the metaphysical map here. So we started the metaphysical map just by learning what's on the map, and we learned a bunch of stops along the way. I'll probably be revisiting that because there's always more to say about good, clear thinking and philosophy. So we went through the map and like, well, who is God? How is he different? I mean, just the God of Islam is 100% different than the God of the Bible. Like, just as one example, the God of the Bible says, I don't lie, I can't lie, I am truth. Jesus refers to himself, he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Thou shalt not lie. In the Quran, Allah says, I am the greatest of deceivers. He's good at lying to people. I mean, the list goes on and on. We'll get into that some other time, but just as one tiny example. So across the metaphysical map, we talked about, well, God creates and our universe is his creation. We're part of that universe. You know, we are material. We live in time. We exist in space, right? So we had to come from somewhere. Well, that had to be the God that created us. And so it has to be a God who, number one, has the ability to create the universe, but also takes credit for creating the universe, which narrows that list down to literally one. Just saying, you got one option. Which one are you going to pick? Okay. Down the metaphysical map, we looked at that reality exists, the material world exists outside of ourselves. We can perceive it, we can think about it, we can believe things about it, which are either accurate, it reflects what is, or is wrong. It is an illusion, it is a lie. And so we have the experience of experiencing, perceiving what is real, or sometimes perceiving what is not real, like a good magic trick. And with these experiences and with our prior knowledge and with learning, we develop beliefs. We use reason and logic to say, well, here's what can be deduced from what I can see, and here's what might be true, and here's what could be true if other things were different, and yada yada. And that's how we come up with our beliefs and our faith. And The way I described it was that belief and knowledge are two sides of the same metaphysical nickel. Because if you don't believe something is true, you wouldn't say you know it. And if you don't know something, you can't believe it. Right? Like, what's in this box? I don't know. But I believe it's a dog. Well, why would you believe something you can't know? I don't know. I like dogs. That's not how that works. Anyway, I'm getting myself off track. Today we are looking at illogic, where you go against the logic. What's known as logical fallacies. So, this is the appendix of the book. Oh, you know, sorry, I'm putting on my flavored chapstick. This is sparkling apple cider. When you're doing your own radio show, kids, you need to have chapstick. Because if you talk a lot, your lips get dry and then they stick together, and then you become really aware of your lips, which is weird. Trying to talk while also being consciously aware of your lips. Try not to think about your tongue. Also, you need coffee. I learned the hard way that orange juice is a very bad drink to have when you're trying to be talking on the microphone. So the chapters we just got through, the last couple of episodes, we've been talking about the gospel. So the whole point of going through the metaphysical map is so we can learn to think clearly, so we can understand what the Bible actually says and teaches, so we don't wind up in some stupid cult. Because there's a lot of cults out there, and a lot of them will be like, we believe the Bible. Here's some Bible verses that tell us what we believe. Like, okay, have you read that entire verse in context, or just those couple of words? It's anyway, if you want a bunch of examples of that, again, Cab Malone over at God City, he's looking at American cults from Jehovah's Witnesses to the Hebrew Israelites, and they all do that. They're all like, well, the Bible teaches what we teach. Like, not if you read it. Not if you read it. If you actually look at what it says, no, it does. Okay, there's plenty of that for the future. For right now, I just want you to be aware of what kind of logical fallacies people can be guilty of. And I want you to be aware of them so that you can hear them coming and so that you don't commit them. So we're going to go through the appendix. Logical fallacies, or what I call cheap samurai tactics. So this is section number 1, Pshua. Hold on, let me see if I'm on the right page here. I am on the right page here. Good for me. All right. Welcome to the appendix, boys and girls. A few chapters back, I discussed how Christians get called all kinds of nasty names like arrogant and closed-minded on account of the fact that we label the things we believe as true. I know, the nerve of us. Sorry for those of you following along. I'm going to increase the size of my text here so you can read it along easier. If you're listening, you don't have to read along. But if you want to read along, I want you to be able to see the words without straining your eyes. Where was I? Aside from the self-defeating and rather silly nature of this complaint, you'll notice that it's also an attempt to side against the idea without actually taking any pains to prove the idea wrong. Even if we agree that we are closed-minded and arrogant, that does nothing to prove that what we believe isn't still true. This diversionary tactic is one of the many devices which you may know as logical fallacies, but which I like to refer to as cheap samurai tactics. Cheap samurai tactics are, in short, bad arguments. It's the muscle you get when you don't splurge on the really good samurai, and you wind up with a second-rate, slightly used discount warehouse samurai. Like, you would have hired Sanda Yukimura if you had the money, but you don't. So you get Adam Sandler in hockey gear with a bucket on his head, singing like the lunch lady and calling himself Samurai Steve. And he cheats because he doesn't know what he's doing. My friend Captain Dan would use this phrase to describe any kind of shortcuts in cheating, but I'm here using it in reference to cheating in an argument or a debate. The cheap samurai tactics, CSTs, are best used when you either know you're wrong but don't want to admit it, or you don't care if you're right or wrong, you just want to fight about something and don't feel like being bogged down by facts and reason. Perhaps it's because you're a lawyer and your client won't pay you if they get the chair, or maybe you're an advertiser who's being paid to sell something that serves only to irritate the people who buy it. Maybe you're just a jerk. Whatever the reason, there are cheap samurai tactics for you. I have divided these into 4 helpful categories. 1, pshaw. 2, look over there. 3, semantics. And 4, sleight of hand. I present them to you so that you can be aware of them. If you find yourself on the receiving end of any of these cheap samurai tactics, just call a foul and move on. As you'll see, these are not arguments which warrant spending a lot of time refuting. Also, if you ever go into politics, law, journalism, marketing, and most kinds of sales, these might come in handy. Just check your scruples at the door. I'll be including the technical terms which are used to name these cheap samurai tactics where applicable, which I will designate TT for technical term. Let's look at the categories one at a time, starting with number 1, pshaw. In short, mockery and copinitude. That's short for attitude, in case you didn't grow up in the 80s. If you like sarcasm and name-calling, or you get most of your facts from watching television or, quote, something I read online, though nothing as reliable as Wikipedia, this category is for you. A, dismissing. This is as simple as name-calling. For example, that idea is stupid. The trick is you aren't disproving the concept so much as calling into question the intellect or character of the persons who accept it. Aside from stupid, you can use any of the following: ignorant, ridiculous, uninformed, anti-science, illogical, irrational, childish, brainless, idiotic, puritanical, outdated, close-minded, bigoted, judgmental, or heartless. Most any negative adjective will do. The more emotional baggage the word has, the better. You know, like racist or Nazi. It's not an argument, but you're going to hear it a lot. Just say something on social media. That's all I'm saying. Where was I? A popular variation on this tactic is attacking the person directly. The technical term is ad hominem, which means at the man or to the man. This has to be more subtle because if you launch into, "You're a stupid duty head," you're not likely to impress anyone with your debate skills. A good variation would be, "Only a stupid duty head could possibly believe something that ridiculous." This way, you've given them two options and are forcing them to choose. Will you reject your position in favor of mine? Or are you in fact a stupid duty head? Heads I win, tails you lose. If you must level up by describing the person's faults in some detail, the trick is to call into question the validity of a position by stating that the other person only thinks the way they do because of some obvious character flaw. You only think that because you're... And then the descriptor should be said with a tone of disgust. "A Republican," or "You're a middle-class suburbanite," or "Because you were homeschooled," or "Because you're a bourgeois capitalist pig." You know, whatever works for you. If you do this right, it won't matter what the facts are or why they really think what they think. No one will listen to them. This will remove from you the burden of being right, having real facts, or making any sense. So technically, this is the genetic fallacy, which means you are calling into question the truthfulness of a claim because you think you know the origin of the belief. It's subtly different, but almost always used as an attack on the person, so I consider it a type of ad hominem. That's just how I roll. B, use ignorance as evidence. The technical term is arguing from ignorance. If you ask a question and the opposing side can't answer it, act as though this proves there is no answer. The hidden assumptions are, number 1, your opponent is all-knowing, and thus a fact they don't know cannot exist. And 2, no matter how absurd the question is or how trivial the answer would have been, this was, you will assert, vital to the defense of their position. For example, in a debate about whether or not Abraham Lincoln was a robot, you can attack with a question like, "If Abraham Lincoln had a human mother, what was her maiden name?" And when they answer, "I don't know," you can jump in with, "Exactly! You don't know because she didn't have a maiden name, because she didn't exist. Lincoln was a robot." And victory is yours. C, use popular opinion. Technical term is the bandwagon fallacy or appeal to popularity. The facts don't matter when you can appeal to common knowledge. Just sigh and roll your eyes and say something like, "Everyone knows that humans only use 10% of their brains." Of course, why you would choose to believe the collective knowledge of people who don't use 90% of their brains is beyond me. The point is, you can assume the average beliefs of those around you to determine transcendent universal truth, even if they failed the 8th grade. The best part is you don't even have to ask anyone. You can just assume that if you know something, Pretty much everyone else knows it too. Study this list of useful CSTs and see if you can spot them being used. Just tune into any one of those political talk shows, and I'm willing to bet you won't hear anything else, except a few slogans and falsified statistics. Thank goodness for commercial breaks. Not that they're much better, but at least they're only 30 seconds each. In the next chapter, we'll dive into the second category. Till then, this is your metaphysical duck wrangler signing off from the narrow-minded and corrupt state of Illinois, which everyone knows is the home of America's first robot president. Everyone knows. There's a song in there somewhere. All right. So that's the first category. So you're going to find this a lot. Just sort of the hand-waving dismissal or attacking the person instead of the idea. It's pretty easy. It's so much easier than like learning things. Now, let me state, because I've gotten this before. Like I referred to AOC, our brain damaged senator from New York. I was like, she's stupid. And they were like, that's a logical fallacy. I'm like, no, she says stupid things all the time that prove that she doesn't know anything about anything. Now, here's the thing. If I was intending to make a case against her, I would go find examples. I don't have her memorized. I just, every now and then I see something that she says or she posts something online and I go, idiot. And then I move on and my brain doesn't really put that for easy recall. Like I could go look it up, but my brain can only do so much. And the amount my brain can do just keeps going down the older I get. So I don't need her on instant recall. So it would be a logical fallacy if I expected you to agree with me merely because I said so. Everybody knows she's an idiot. Okay, but if you go, well, why do you think so? I'd be like, hold on. Flip, flip, flip. Okay, here are some things that she said. I mean, I think she's one of the collection of Democrats who are like, the most dangerous people in our country are white men. Straight white men are evil, and they're all a danger to all of us. But she's married to one. Which I don't, like, I get, like, you know, she's making good money. She's rich and famous. But don't you think when she gets home at the end of the day, he's all like, hun, when you say all white men are the biggest problem in America, that the most dangerous group in America is white men, do you think of me as a white man? I feel like that conversation is going to be awkward. Unless he's afraid, which he probably would be. Let's do chapter 2. Cheap Samurai Tactics number 2. This is, again, the appendix of the Socratic Ducky, available at a bit of orange.com. I'm going to take a sip of coffee and slow down a little. The finest coffee that Trader Joe's has to offer. Actually, Trader Joe's coffee is all really good. All right, welcome to Cheap Samurai Tactics number 2. Look over there! Welcome once again to Cheap Samurai Tactics for Beginners. Listed in your catalog as CST 101, Section 203. Cheap Samurai Tactics are just a form of cheating. Last time I introduced you to the first of 4 categories of Cheap Samurai Tactics, CSTs, and I gave you the rundown on how to use the tactics within. Let's review the categories. Number 1, pshaw. For my American audience, pshaw is not something that anyone says anymore. It used to be just the sound of dismissiveness. Pshaw. That's the hand waving sound. So in case you're like, what's pshaw? I don't know where it comes from. But that's the, pshaw. It's the polite way of going. So category 1 is pshaw. Category 2 is look over there. Category 3 is semantics, and category 4 is sleight of hand. Today we'll look at the second category, look over there. This is the art of misdirection. Technically, these could all be considered red herrings. That just means an argument is made to be a rabbit trail away from the actual topic and toward one where you look good or your opponent looks like a bozo. So the key to these tactics is to change the subject without your opponent noticing that you've done so. You don't have to lose an argument if you can start a new one when no one's looking. So, A, discredit the source. If you can cast a negative light on the source of information, you can make the issue at hand guilty by association. For instance, if you could prove that recycling got its start with Attila the Hun, bloodthirsty scourge of the 5th century, you could use that as an argument for the innate evils of reducing, reusing, and all that other stuff. Though deep down, we all know that were the devil of hell to say the sky is blue, the darn thing would still be blue. Just, keep it under your hat. Let me rant on that for just a second. So what you do, again, here is whoever has said whatever it is, like, well, where do you get this idea? Well, this person said, or that source said, or I read it in this book or whatever. You attack the source. Ignore the information entirely. It doesn't matter. Well, he was a racist. You're going to listen to a racist? Or that's people. When you hear atheists talk about the Bible, this is the kind of embarrassing thing that this is all they're capable of doing. Like, oh, that book was written by illiterate ancient goat herders. Like, illiterate people wrote a book. And what's funny about that is that's kind of true of the Quran, because Muhammad actually was illiterate. He couldn't write it down. He would say it, and then somebody else wrote it down after he died. So the Quran literally falls into written by an illiterate 7th century goat herder, whereas the Bible was clearly written by scribes and people who could write. Anyway. Again, but see, if my only argument was, well, you can't trust the Quran, it was written by an illiterate 7th century goat herder. That's not really an argument against the content. To go after the content, you have to see, well, what does it actually say? Like, well, for instance, it teaches you to beat your wife. Oh, well, that's different than husbands love your wives sacrificially as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. That's different? See how that's different? Okay, I'm getting off topic. Back to our book. A1.5. You're only saying that because this is a variation on Cheap Samurai Tactic 2A, to attack the motivation of the person with whom you are debating. So instead of attacking the source, you're attacking the motivation of the person sharing the information. This is usually in the form of, you're only saying that because, and really anything here will do. You're only saying that because you're a bigot, or because you're a Jew, or because you hate me, or because you're a jerk, or because you're a Republican, or because you're a Nazi, or because you're a vegan, or because you're a man-eating killer clown from outer space, etc. Obviously, the truthfulness of a statement has nothing to do with the motive the speaker has to share it, but the point of Cheap Samurai Tactics is not to make logical sense, it's to win, win, win! Technically, this is a form of ad hominem attacking the speaker instead of the idea. But who said there has to be anything neat and tidy about cheating? The point is you are changing the subject without letting on that you are changing the subject. So let me clarify here. You say, here is an idea, or if you're using these cheap samurai, let's say that you're the cheap samurai. Somebody goes, hey, here's my position. And you're like, oh, that's dumb. And they go, well, here's some information that supports my position. And you go, well, the only reason you're saying that is because you're and something negative. Because you hate science. That's a popular one. You hate science. Their motivation. I mean, maybe that's true. Maybe that is their motivation. Like, maybe the only reason I'm doing any of this is because I'm an arrogant idiot who loves the sound of my own voice. Probably true. But that doesn't mean that the stuff I'm sharing isn't itself quality information with truth behind it. It just means I have character flaws. But see, you're changing the argument. We're not talking about the information you presented. We're now talking about your character flaws. Well, you're only bringing this up because you are a bad person somehow. Okay, but... And this is the time where I'm like, all right, let's assume that I'm an idiot and a terrible person. Now, if what if I presented, if the argument and evidence I have presented was given to you by somebody who was a good, smart person, how would you answer them? Like, you don't have to worry about the fact that I'm a dumb idiot and a jerk. Okay, I'm a dumb idiot and a jerk. If you were dealing with somebody who is kind, somebody you respect, somebody intelligent, and they said what I just said, how would you answer that person? All right, let's bypass me, because that's what this whole cheap samurai tactic is about, is like, well, instead of answering your position and your evidence, I'm going to attack you personally. I get this from atheists. I get this from evolutionists. They're like, well, you're only saying that because you hate science. I'm like, okay. Well, assume that maybe you heard this from someone who doesn't hate science. Somebody that you respect as being intelligent. How would you answer them now? I don't need to defend myself. I probably am an arrogant idiot who loves the sound of his own voice. But in my defense, I didn't just sit around here talking to myself. I said to myself, hey, I talk to myself a lot. I should film myself talking to myself and then put it online for other people so they can listen to me talking to myself. It sounds weird when you put it that way. It's a podcast. Let's get back to my book. B, discredit the proponents or beneficiaries. If bad or foolish people agree with something, it must be bad or foolish. If it could be shown that the Ku Klux Klan preferred to travel by taxi, you'd have all the proof you need to denounce every cab in New York as racist. But of course, everyone knows the KKK actually preferred to travel by bus, as it has more headroom for their big pointy hats. And the same is true of witches and a surprising number of ancient Egyptian deities, as is shown by this illustration in our book. Because, they have the big pointy hat. Hey, wait a minute. Witches have big pointy hats. Klansmen have big pointy hats. The Pope has a big pointy hat. And the Pope wears white a lot. The Pope's a Klansman! Huh? See how easy that is? That doesn't make any sense. Anyway, let me get back to I'm sorry. C, use a resume as proof. The technical term is appeal to authority. Don't just use a source's credentials as a reason to trust them. Use it as proof that their ideas are true. Anyone with an MD, PhD, a DVD, or a show on TV must be right about everything they say, provided it agrees with what you think, of course. And don't let yourself think they can only be all-knowing in their field of study. A British biologist can write books on theology if he wants to. Can the study of nucleotide base pairs really be that different from being an Orthodox Jew? I mean, the man went to college, for crying out loud, in England. So he has to be right about everything he says. This is what I'm saying, especially because he has that English accent. D, argue against the metaphor. Oh, I love this one so much. At some point, your opponent will make use of an illustration to clarify a point. This is where you strike. As an example, it has been said that the way men think is different from the way women think. It's been said women's thoughts are like spaghetti because they all intertwine, and men's thoughts are like waffles because they compartmentalize. And this is where you shoot back. So you're saying that men's and women's minds are both made of starches and carbohydrates. You've just proven my point that men's and women's minds work in exactly the same way. And then you'd go home and sacrifice a goat on your shrine of Hillary Clinton and thank her for your victory. It makes staff meetings so much fun. This is technically a form of the straw man fallacy because you are arguing not against your opponent's actual point, but some horribly mutated version of it. Straw man gets its name from a cute word picture. Imagine you have claimed you can defeat the world heavyweight boxing champion. Someone calls on you to prove it, so to save your own life, you make a scarecrow and pretend it's the champ and smack it around for a while. If no one takes a close look or pays any attention, you can claim victory and head out for a celebratory ice cream sandwich. If someone notices the straw flying out of a limp and inert champ, you just pick another cheap samurai tactic and change the subject as fast as possible. E, focus on the fringe, aka hasty generalizations. In every group, category, or concept, there is a tiny collection of anomalies. If you can keep the focus on that tiny sample, you can deflect any facts which only relate to the 99% your opponent dogmatically insists represents the issue. This is the way people pointed to George Burns and said, "He's 105 and he smokes a cigar every day." And to them, this was good evidence that smoking isn't bad for you. In fact, maybe it's good for you. And then there's, the more than 1,000 deaths every day in this country that are linked to smoking, but I digress. E2. Parts equal the whole. This is known as the fallacy from composition. That's its technical term. It is making the assumption that because each part of something has some property, then the whole must also have that property. For example, an elephant is made up of parts I could easily eat within the span of 10 minutes. Elephant toenail? Easy. Elephant eyelash? Just a splash of little dressing on that and it's gone. Elephant spleen? Serve it with a side of greens and I'll chow that down with time to spare. Therefore, since each part of an elephant can be eaten by me within 10 minutes, it can be argued that I can eat the whole elephant in 10 minutes. Just bring me the extra large bottle of barbecue sauce and have dessert ready in 11 minutes. There are times when this kind of argument isn't invalid. The key is to figure out if the whole really can have the property in question. If I say, each tile on the bathroom floor is... Wow. If I say, each tile on the bathroom floor is blue, therefore the whole floor is blue, this would be correct. And it doesn't require a stomach pump when I try and prove it. F. Turning facts into bizarre absolutes. Like the previous cheap samurai tactic, this works by making mountains out of molehills. Only this time, instead of you focusing on the fringe, you'll imply that your opponent is doing so. They may, for instance, admit that a college education isn't 100% protection from becoming poor and homeless. This is where you quickly say, you think people who graduate from college all wind up homeless. Or maybe you want us to believe that every panhandler in the city has a PhD in reverse economics. And in that precious second of stunned silence, you shake your head scornfully and walk off as though you've just won the argument. I think we can all admit that getting the last word is even better than being right. G. Feelings. Nothing more than feeling. Sorry. You will have strong emotions related to certain topics, or you could pretend to, if you take a few acting classes at your local community college. Nothing is easier than assuming that your feelings prove the truthfulness of something. This is the concept that most marriages are built on these days. This is one of the several key reasons most marriages fail these days, but I digress. I'm writing a different book about that. My point is, if something makes you feel bad, it must be bad. And if something makes you feel good, it must be good. Of course, you'd never come out and say this, because you'd sound like some unicorn fairy rainbow cloud dancer from the 3rd grade. Focus on the feelings, let the rest be assumed. If you want to defend your position legitimately, you'd probably change your position first. During the Obama administration, America developed a new favorite pastime, far surpassing watching football or baseball, which was being outraged. Knowing the details of an incident was unnecessary. The media would present some event, color it with emotional words, interview some emotional people, and the rest of us knew to be outraged at that person, group, or event. Thank goodness for the media, or we'd have to decide on our own what to be angry at. Why, during the Bush administration, not only did the average American have to decide on their own how to feel about an event, but they could go literally weeks without being outraged. Can you imagine? Doesn't that make you really angry? Or are you some kind of bigot racist moron? You see what I did there? It's really easy. Next time we'll learn how the pen is mightier than the sword and how the tongue is like a spark that starts a terrible fire. In the meantime, your homework is to find ways to make use of these handy tools of deviance. And don't limit it to conversations. If you're losing at poker, just lay down a pair of matching cards and say, go fish. As my friend Captain Dan always says, win if you can, lose if you must, but always cheat. Well, my next song has nothing to do with that, but this is a song from Unified Rock Theory. After this song, we're going to come back and learn some more cheap samurai tactics. But we're going to take a little rock break with Unified Rock Theory. This is one of my favorite songs. It's about sharing. This is Parrots Sharing Pairs by Unified Rock Theory here on Rent a Friend Radio. Enjoy.
If you give a pair to two parakeet parrots, I find it fair that they both share the pair. Isn't it right and polite that they might be a pair? Fair parrots sharing a pair. I went to the fair with a pair in my pocket. I paid quite a fare to get there at the fair. And when I was there at the fair, I did rock it. I rocked my binoc to see birds at the fair. And there at the fair was a parakeet pair, which a parrots pretending which wear feathers bright. I thought of my pair and said a spare prayer for if I bear the pair, would the parakeets fight? I moved to the parrot's cage there at the fair, and I sat in a chair which was needing repair. And I pulled out the pair from my pocket and placed it between those fair parrots and told them to share. I told them the mayor would be keeping an eye on the parakeet parrots to see they play fair. I paid a fair fare to be there at the fair and to rock my binoc and watch birds everywhere. And tossing my hair with such flair, I said be now a pair of fair parrots sharing a pair. Parrots unfair will be faced with a stare from a horse at the fair who is known as the mayor. If parakeets rudely refuse to share food, a mayor from the fair will give them a rare stare. I went to the fair with a pair in my pocket. I paid quite a fare to get there at the fair. And when I was there at the fair, I did rock it. I rocked my binoc to see birds at the fair. A pair of parodies given a sweet treat should practice partaking with both parrots there. Isn't it right and polite that they might be a pair, fair pair? parrots sharing a pair. A pair of parrots with care should beware, for if they're not fair with the pair, then the pair will face a rare glare from a mare from the fair, who will stare from the fair at the parrots from there, until they are fair and fairly good sharing, and both parakeets get a piece of the pair. A pair of parakeets given a sweet treat should practice partaking with both parrots there. Isn't it right and polite that they might be a pair, fair parrots sharing a pair? Parrots with carrots can care less than parrots who have to share pairs with parrots at fairs upstairs at the fair, but fair mare carrots and so many he doesn't care if they're shared. With mare carrots, so many green prepare carrots that he doesn't care if the carrots are shared. Can care less than parrots who have to share pairs with parrots at fairs upstairs at the fair mare carries carrots and so many he doesn't care if they're shared. The mare carries so many pre-prepared carrots that he doesn't care if the carrots are shared. Until they are fair and fairly good sharing, and both parakeets get a piece of the pear. Parakeets get a piece of the pear.
Oh, that fair mare. You got to be aware of the fair mare, am I right? That's Parrots Sharing Pairs by Unified Rock Theory here on Rent a Friend Radio. I'm Brian from Shy. And I was thinking to myself, all right, we're coming up on an hour here. Should I just wait? No, because we are finishing the Socratic Ducky today, because what we're doing next time, we are starting this book, Sunday School for Sinners and Saints, and I am excited about it. So we are going to finish our cheap samurai tactics, and then next time we are getting into deeper theology, which will still be lots of fun. So where are we at here? Book reading, Cheap Samurai Tactics number 3, using words as weapons. That word is plural. I can read. I went to school. Welcome back to Cheap Samurai Tactics, where you'll learn how to shake, rattle, and roll and do the grammatical twist it takes to never lose an argument, even if you're wrong or simply have no idea what you're talking about. Nobody likes to be wrong, but let's face it, all of us will be wrong every now and then. This doesn't mean you have to admit to it. If you play your cards right, you can still come out with a facade of victory. Even better than being right is winning an argument, or maybe just getting in the last word. Frankly, sometimes you have to just take what you can get. And here's a picture of a man about to kill a kitten with an axe. First, we learned how to cover your tracks with a thick layer of attitude. Next, I showed you how to divert attention away from your shortcomings, in fact, details, information, or brain power. Today, you'll learn how to use spoken and written word to make the truth fairly unimportant to the outcome of a discussion. I present to you the third category of Cheap Samurai Tactics, semantics. This is the art of wielding words as weapons, not to be confused with Semitics, which are the people of the Middle East, especially the Jews. Semantics is playing with language. Used for good, it leads to jokes and puns and songs. Used for evil, it's the following Cheap Samurai Tactics. A. Be the human thesaurus. If you can rename the terms of the discussion, you're halfway to winning the argument. Of course, a rose by any other name will still have thorns and will need to be handled carefully if you want to avoid puncture wounds. Calling something by a new name doesn't do anything but slap a new "Hello, my name is" sticker on the same old thing. This is the way a realtor can use the phrase, nestled in the Swiss Alps in the crisp mountain air under showers of sparkling snow, when he could have said, wedged between some rocks in a frigid environment with a ton of sleet. Which appeals to you more, nestled or wedged? It's not a trick question. This is very close to the fallacy of ambiguous terms, but it's a step further. Instead of being merely misleading, you actually insist that the word now has a totally new meaning and act all offended when your opponent insists on defining the word the way it has been for over 2,000 years. Then blog or tweet about how they keep trying to get away with misusing that word. Now we attack their upbringing or education. Right? Here's the thing. When I wrote that, the thing I was probably making fun of was atheists who have changed the definition of the word atheist. For 2,000 years, for all of American history, for most of the use of the English language, the word atheist just meant an anti-theist. Well, a theist is someone who believes that God does exist, so an anti-theist would be someone who believes God does not exist. So it would be the position, no, God does not exist. But thanks to the easy sharing of information on the old internet, we've discovered that that's a really stupid, indefensible position. You can't make an argument for atheism. You just can't. There's not a single decent argument that could be made. I have likened it to trying to write a persuasive essay to prove that words don't exist. It's only self-defeating. But the world has gotten dumber in this time, and so changing the definition of a word. What is a woman? Well, a woman is someone who identifies as a woman. Okay, but they identify as what? As a woman. And what is that? Well, it's somebody who identifies as a woman. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. The Devil's Inquisition, aka the loaded question. Phrase an insult, insinuation, or misleading information as a question. In much the same way middle school kids try to pull off insults and slanderous lies. I was just kidding. Adults take the grammatically diplomatic route and say, I was only asking. If used properly, you can accuse someone of horrible crimes and prove that there is reason to believe your allegations. It goes like this. Is it true that you've never denied killing orphan kittens for satanic cult rituals? And most likely they've never been accused of such a thing, which means you'll be able to demonstrate how they've never denied these allegations. Whatever newspaper you work for won't need that much detail in the piece you write, and you'll have your headline. Let me just as one example that people have tried to use for so many years. People are like, well, when has Trump ever disavowed white supremacy? When has Trump ever publicly made a stance against racism? And the thing is, he has lots of times, over and over and over. But they ask that question in a vacuum, just kind of like, well, when has Trump ever said that he disagrees with the Nazis? When has he ever attacked the KKK as being a bunch of criminals? And the thing is, he has dozens of times on camera, in interviews or in speeches. But as long as you ignore that and just the Devil's Inquisition, well, when has Trump ever said that he's not a Nazi? And just leave it there? I'm just asking. I didn't say he's a Nazi. I'm just asking if he's ever publicly stated that he's not a Nazi. I'm just asking a question. See how that works? Yeah. There's a lot of that going on the old internet. Like, I'm just asking questions here. I'm asking questions, and now these people are trying to say we're not allowed to ask questions. See, and that goes to attacking the person there. See, you use these together. You chain them together. It's daisy chaining. Where was I? All right. You can sort of use vagueness. If you don't want to get bogged down by facts and truth and all that nonsense, you can avoid being argued against by using only words and phrases with unclear meanings. It's hard to prove someone wrong when you can't prove what they've said, It's hard to prove someone wrong when you can't prove that they've said anything in the first place. This is the key to advertising and political campaign speeches. Use words like improved, popular, or change. Phrases like scientifically proven or space age. As an example, for most of us, space age conjures up all kinds of images of silver rockets and men in white lab coats conducting experiments with the kind of machinery that Adam West used to play with in the Batcave. The fact is, the space age is literally anything after 1945. Just to name a few space age inventions: the 8-track, space age; the microwave oven, space age; the A-Team starring George Papard and Mr. T, space age. Scientifically proven isn't saddled with nearly as much exact definitive baggage as space age. You can pretty much use that anytime you want. To conclude this educational supplement of useful space age intellectual resources, let me ask you, did you know it is scientifically proven that all readers of this book become amazingly wealthy in a short matter of time? I'm just asking. I'm just asking a question. I'm not making a statement. I'm just asking a question. I'm just asking a question. I'm not allowed to ask questions. We're not allowed to ask questions. Oh, you guys are a bunch of bigots. All right, we got one more of these. Are you ready? Yes, this is so much fun because I'm a nerd. I feel like there was something I wanted to interject at the end there before I got sidetracked. Let's see. Vagueness. Oh, let me just bring up when Obama got elected. I don't know if you're old enough to remember this, but his whole thing was hope, change. That was it. Like, that was his campaign poster, was just the words hope and change. But hope for what? Well, I guess hope for change. Okay, but change. What's changing? What's going to be changed? How will it change? Nobody asked that question. Like, you're just supposed to assume, well, change must mean improvement, right? But that's not what the word means. Change just means it's different. Getting worse is a change. Okay. We have one more chapter here. Cheap Samurai Tactics, number 4, sleight of hand. Are you ready? So excited. Welcome once more to Cheap Samurai Tactics, the class where we teach you the dirty, underhanded cheats, which will allow you to never lose an argument, or at least look like you haven't. Our final category is the kind that earns clever fish-related nicknames and Latin legal terms, almost none of which I know. Find a good lawyer and ask him about it for $200 an hour. In the meantime, I present to you our 4th and final category of Cheap Samurai Tactics, sleight of hand. It's so sneaky, it's almost magic. Much like magic, the trick behind this set of tactics is making sure your opponent doesn't catch on to what you're doing. Keep them off balance, talk fast, interrupt them when they talk, and of course make use of all the other categories of cheap samurai tactics. If you get really good at all of this, you may have a lucrative career in law, unless you're no good at Latin phrases. A. Circular reasoning, also known as, technical term, begging the question. This classic move is an old school favorite. It involves making various claims that depend on each other for support, like so. You assert A, and support it with B. When asked to defend or prove B, you provide A as evidence. It goes like so. You find your rubber duck is missing, and you believe your sister's friend Stacy is the thief. Your sister says, "Stacy could not have stolen your ducky." You ask how she knows this to be so. "Simple," she says, "because Stacy is my friend, and I would not be friends with a thief." Laugh track plays and you cut to commercial. Logical progression. I'm sorry, illogical progression. This is simply building a case by showing how a series of premises can lead to a completely unrelated conclusion. Whereas actual logic would say A, B, and C, therefore D, this tactic goes A, 3, and £, therefore Q. Here's a fun example you can use at parties to amaze your friends. Number 1, vegans eat vegetables. Number 2, vegetables are green. 3, frogs are green. 4, therefore frogs are vegetables. And conclusion 5, therefore vegans eat frogs. C, correlation equals causation. This is pseudoscience at its finest. You gather data. You find some elements that show up together, and then you decide that one causes the other. This can be good and superficial. Don't dig too much. If you could prove that your local football team wins games on nights where the nachos outsell the hot dogs, that would be enough to decide that the secret to victory is selling more nachos. Get the cheerleaders to rhyme about nachos. Replace your mascot with Mr. Nacho. Your team will go all the way. Or at least, you can claim they will. Don't put any of your own money on that trophy showing up, though. D, skip the foundation. When making a logical progression of ideas, you don't need to use proven or defensible premises if you can just be bold and focus on the conclusion. This is about attitude. Several modern smarty-pants philosophers have made the following argument. Miracles don't occur. Therefore, the Bible is not reliable, since it claims to record miracles occurring. You may be asking what these philosophers did to prove that miracles don't occur. If you are, you need to start over at the beginning of this paragraph. You don't need to overthink cheap samurai tactics. They're just pretty much as user-friendly as they seem. E. Cut out the context. Hey, cut it out. Taking things out of context is as old and traditional as any cheap samurai tactic is likely to be. Context gives things their definition. Once you get rid of the context, you can make things say whatever you want. If you can't see the benefit of that, maybe the debate club is not the club for you. Give the swim team a try, or maybe cross country, or just go home and watch television. F. Unacknowledged self-contradiction. This tactic is for sissies, wimps, and real men of courage. Its graceful brilliance comes from the clumsy way it stems from a dim-witted lack of understanding. From personal experience, I can tell you that if I were to ever use this tactic, I'm sure it would probably work well unless it failed. G. The red herring. This is essentially the whole category of, look over there, cheap samurai tactics. Or maybe I don't understand it. The point is, this one has a legit name which is funny and will compel me to look up its origin on Wikipedia. If I've been told right, the name comes from the concept of a fleeing criminal dragging fish across his trail to throw off the dogs that are sniffing him out. Once you can get the dog to sniff out the fish, you can get away with all kinds of nonsense. But then you might have a flock of cats to deal with, so there are risks. Especially if you're allergic to cats, metaphorically speaking. I am allergic to cats, so clearly I know what I'm talking about here. H. Answer the question no one asked. I call this the Al Gore method. Al Gore used to be vice president. Back before he was selling environmental penance and indulgences, Al Gore was just another politician, vice president, or something like that. I've watched some unedited footage of him giving an interview during which included the time during commercial breaks. During this interview, he was asked a question and then answered a completely different question. The reporter noticed this and asked it again, and Al answered another different question. The reporter tried one more time, and Al answered yet another unasked question. He was asked the same question 3 times because he refused to answer the one he was actually asked. And the best thing about this video clip was watching his political advisor actually tell him to do this. I don't feel like you have to answer the questions I ask you, this guy tells Al. I'm not making assumptions. This is actually on the video. It's the best collision of politics and postmodernism I've ever seen. So I don't know where this video is, but it's an unedited. So they cut away to commercial. So if you were watching this at home, it's Al Gore's having an interview, and then they've cut away to commercial. So while you are watching a commercial, the camera is still rolling, and that's the footage I'm talking about. And so his political advisor, whoever this guy is, like, he can tell that the reporter is getting frustrated that he has to keep asking the same question. He's like, hey, don't feel like you have to answer the question that they ask you. If you don't like the question, answer a different question. Like, he just tells him that on camera. I'm like, there you go. Just be dishonest. So that's what I'm making reference to. If I ever find that video, I will share it with you because it's a masterclass in being a liar. Where was I at? Now, I don't mean to imply that only Al Gore has done this. If you've seen a political debate, you have seen this. As for me, I will always think of Al when I think of this cheap samurai tactic. And may I add, this cheap samurai tactic leaves absolutely no carbon footprint. I. That's the letter in our alphabet here. Argue against the conclusion they haven't reached. The trick here is to try to anticipate their train of thought to be somewhere horrible. The simple formula is, you said A, so obviously you are leading up to Q. Now here's why Q is wrong, and you are a twit. This is a good time to make use of cheap samurai tactic 1A or 2A. And let's be honest, as a cheap samurai tactic, there's never a bad time to start the name calling. J. Divert attention to the result of the idea being true. Like the previous cheap samurai tactic, you need to follow the idea to its logical or completely illogical conclusion. If this idea is true, here is the result. And of course, this only works in your favor if the result is horrible. You can do this with your own ideas, but the result is magically delicious. Like this. I'm supporting recycling because at the rate recycling technology is improving, we'll soon be able to power all of Los Angeles with the energy we save by recycling a single beer bottle. If this is true, it will solve all of the world's problems, including plaque and dust and mosquitoes. Whew. Okay, campers, there is the complete collection. Now you are ready to go out there and be a cheating, deviant weasel. Get the last word. Win every argument, even when you have no idea what the conversation is about. And most importantly, don't tell anyone that I had anything to do with this. The last thing my credibility needs is to be linked to something ridiculous like this. Hey, you see that red fish over there? I have to go now. And I actually do have to go now. That's the end, everybody. I hope you learned some stuff. Whew, that is exhausting, but that is all the cheap samurai tactics you need, and they will come up again as we talk about arguments and we talk about theology. You're going to find that a lot of cults, a lot of political positions rely heavily or almost entirely on cheap samurai tactics, so they'll be coming back. Don't you worry about it. Next time, super excited, we're going to start looking at Sunday School for Sinners and Saints. You can get it as a free digital download on abitoforange.com, or you can follow the link on abitoforange.com under free books when you go to where the digital download for this is. There will also be a link to take you to Amazon so you can buy the paperback version and have an actual physical book in your hands. How great would that be? But we are out of time. Thanks for sticking with it. Thanks for letting me be your Rent-A-Friend. And remember, Jesus loves you. I'll see you next time here on Rent-A-Friend Radio.
Jesus loves you is the message we send. Thanks for letting me be your Rent-A-Friend. Rent-A-Friend 2000. He's your bargain bin hero. Talks like he's 30. Much already at zero. He's a friend to all. Answers when you call. Rent-A-Friend 2000. Best worst friend of all. Yeah, your best worst friend of all. You're listening to Rent-A-Friend Radio.